So good night, ya moonlight ladies. Rock-a-bye, sweet baby siege. Deep greens and blues are the colors I choose. Won't you let me go down in my dreams and rock-a-bye, sweet baby siege. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, the aforementioned sweet baby Siege. How you doing, Siege and Sarawik?
I'm doing good. They're going to know about our pre-show rituals now. I feel like you're letting them in on a secret.
Well, I mean, I'm going to let them in on another secret. It's 6 a.m. for you right now. I got to tell you, that whole Sweet Baby Siege thing, that was my mind like, this will be hilarious right in the moment. Like, it's like, let's call him Sweet Baby Siege because he's a sleepy boy. And, yeah, so.
I mean, like, I am. It is, it is a normally a day off day for me and all that sort of stuff. So, yes, getting up early is a bit of a bummer in some regards. But first of all, I mean, to do this, it's never a bummer, right? Let me just say that. Secondly, like, 6 a.m., I'm not going to sit here and act like 6 a.m. is some type of mind-numbing hour for people to be up and about.
But, I mean, that's what, like, Hollywood treats it as, right? I can't believe I get up on Sunday.
Of course, there was something I was just watching this week. Oh, Batman Cape Crusader. There's a bit when they introduced Selena Kyle where she sleeps in and her helper at the time in the moment is just like, it is mid-afternoon and she's just like, and in the show, in the episode, it makes sense because like she's been out all night, not even yet as the Catwoman, by the way. Like this is like she's just being Selena Kyle's socialite, and like she's just been out until like 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. So yes, of course she's sleeping until like 2 in the afternoon. But there was that part of me that was right on board with that person that was just like, get up, you butt.
Yeah, right? I mean, I think that's when you finally grow up. Like, the true sign of growing up is like, how dare you sleep past noon, you son of a bitch. I don't care about it.
I would, at some point, I can sleep too much and it hurts.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's all I can think is just like, oh, do you know how much my body would hurt if I slept until 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
So my question about somebody who sleeps until 2 in the afternoon, do you think that's like dead knockout rock sleep? She gets in at 6 a.m. and then is asleep until 2 in the afternoon? Because whenever I sleep in, I still wake up at like 5:30 and then tell my body, no, we're going back to sleep now. But my body's like, it's time to go.
I know one of the big things that really affects me in that regard, like specifically in that regard, is light, right? So if you got yourself in a room with some nice blackout curtain, like true, honest to God, like floor to ceiling, like blackout curtains, where you just don't know. And I have stayed in like a good number of like hotel rooms and things like this that this has worked. If I don't know what the sun is doing, my body can just do its own thing. It will sleep. It will act like it needs sleep. It will go for as long as it needs to. It will wake up. Things will be great. The problem is the second that any sunshine comes out, my body's like, oh, the sun's out. Time to get up. And I'm just like, we don't need to. We really don't, buddy.
We can go back to bed, buddy. Sunshine, go away today. Yeah. I feel like some sleeping. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I've, because of the time on the ship, right, where I lived in literally an inside cabin, so I had no sunlight. My body, like, periodically wakes itself up. So it's like, are we good? Like, can we keep doing this? Like, it's a weird,
that's the instinct in you.
Yeah.
That's hey, there's tigers out in the woods. Do we need to check on that? And it's just like, no, body, we are on a ship in the ocean. Also, It's 2018 or whatever. We don't.
Yeah, right. It's just 2010. But it's one of those where like, oh, there's no light, and we might have to do something, right? Like we're technically on call, even though we're taking a nap in the afternoon. So
that's the worst for me is if I've got something to do that day. It doesn't matter what time. Then my body's just like, we got to get up and get ready for work, and it's just like, well, we're not going to work until like noon. It's cool. We can sleep in. No, it never happens. No.
I'm really upset that it's the middle of the afternoon, Miss Kyle. How dare you still slumber? Is not after she's become Catwoman, because like the pithy remark would be like, my whole skis is that I'm based on cats, and what do cats do all day? Shut the fuck up, Alfred Jr.
Alfred Jr.
I don't know. I haven't watched it. I've wanted to. I only just recently found out where it's airing. And then I had said that I was gonna watch, but I got
As
real.
somebody that's been looking forward to it, it took me a couple of minutes to figure out where the fuck to find it. I like, so I don't blame you on that one.
All right, so I mean, before I go into my deep dive and what I want to start this episode talking about, did you know that new Futurama started?
Yeah, and
Okay,
I
good.
only know because of a side scroll on Reddit while I was on the toilet this morning.
Fun. See, so he just found out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know it's coming, and then I accidentally logged into Hulu. I was trying to go to like HBO Max to watch to watch John Oliver last week tonight, which I didn't know there was a city in the whole Israel Palestine situation. Hebron. Have you heard of this city, Hebron? That is literally like a dystopian city where the rich are built upon the poor and they throw their trash down on them. The clip that they used was from a documentary where the guy's like, oh yeah, no, like all these shops are closed because if you were to walk in this market, you could get hit with and he gets hit with a beer bottle at the time where he's talking about like it's just the thing. Someone from up top throws a bottle
straight up
at
fucking
this
yeah,
guy.
no, it's straight up fucking Midgar from Final Fantasy VII. Yeah,
Yeah, it's. I was thinking like the Morlocks and the other things from the Time Machine, H.G. Wells. I think it says something that I only remember the name of the Morlocks.
I do
after
think
reading
that I would probably put money down that the people that wrote Final Fantasy VII had a passing knowledge of the time machine as well. So
Well, yeah, that's a good point. But it was one of those situations where I'm just like, this is happening in the real world. And the question that I have is like, did it just happen, or were the people who planned this city like, hey, you guys ever play Final Fantasy VII? No, I don't play video games. You ever read The Time Machine by H.G. Wells? Oh yeah, here's my idea. Crazy, right? But just let me finish. And then they did it, right? Like it's like Elysium. Is that the name of that movie? The weird follow up to District 9?
the one that's not Halo, the Halo not
the Halo
Halo
movie
yeah.
that's not Halo. The Matt Damon one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, see, we're good.
Where Shelto Copley, who should have been in the main role, is still in it as the baddie, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You say that he should have been in the main role, and I would understand why. But like him getting to play the villain in that was cool.
I gotta say, I don't have a problem with that movie. We will talk about Elysium improper, I think, someday. Probably because at some point we should probably talk about Halo and what the fuck is going on with that. Of all of the big series that we never talk about on this show, that's a pretty glaring one.
So this is everyone's reminder that Sejohn currently has Paramount Plus.
Thank you. Thanks. Including Sejohn's.
Are you gonna have it for next Friday with the premiere of the Tales of the TMNT?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
There's no current plans to get rid of it. It's definitely one of the ones that's like first on the chopping block if we decide to start moving to another one, because I think we've talked about this where we're a rotation.
You have to
family.
be nomads. Streaming nomads are the you have to go where the buffalo goes, Sejohn, and I understand.
But at the moment there's nothing huge coming. You know, the big thing with Netflix is we're waiting for the new season of The Dragon Prince to drop, and then after we binge that, I think we're gonna take a break on Netflix for a little bit too. So
I get that. I'm super happy to have it for the Karate Kid, the Cobra Kai stuff right now. But again, Tales of the TMNT, I hope that you have access to it. I would really love to make sure we talk about that after it premieres, because I can't believe that in 40 years of the Ninja Turtles, and I believe 35 years of the Tales of the TMNT imprint, we're finally getting a series called The Tales of the TMNT. Like, it blows my mind on this level that I can't even put words to. Like, that's how blown my mind is.
We're going to do some turtle talk later, because we got to talk a little bit more about Splintered Fate.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that right now. I was going to try to find a lovely segue into it, because more like Splintered Weight. I'm so mad. And I'm going to bring everybody through the oral history of Devon Decker's week with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate. Before I do that, CJ, were there any things you wanted to get off of your chest about Splintered Fate?
No, I think I kind of hinted at this if I didn't outright say it, but like it has the bones of a phone game, and I don't think it's going to be able to get really past that for me. It's not that there's not good work being done or anything like that. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff to celebrate about the game, but all in all, it lands pretty flat for me. It's a pretty like solid like 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 experience on my own. The second I start playing with people, it is definitely a much better experience, but like to organize that in this day and age and get it right, and to do it as often as you would need to in order to play that game properly, because it is a game that is built on the amount of time you play it, because it's a phone game. Like that, because of all of that, that starts to work against it at some point.
I mean,
That's where I'm at. So.
That's understandable. You say it's a game that requires time to be put in, but it's not one of those games with like you can't do a run for 5 minutes after you've completed a run.
No, it doesn't.
Like, it doesn't
force
have
you
the
to wait.
microtransactions.
You're allowed to play in that time, but it is so slowly built in the progression aspect because it intended to keep you playing on your phone for as long as possible.
I just wanted to make sure, because there are two schools of that thought, and I wanted to make sure that
one of the biggest signs of this, right, is that there is 4 different currencies that I'm aware of right now, possibly 5.
7,
and
I think, at the end of the game.
7 altogether.
To be completely honest.
So like, and so what they do is they gate certain parts of progression and types of progression behind all these different types of currencies, and because there's all these different types of currencies, you are getting rewarded every time you do something, but it's never quite enough to actually push yourself yet, right? There's always this stretch, and it's a delicate balance, because on the one hand, the rewarding feeling when something good does happen, when you do get a lot of money, when you do get past something in games in general, that is also a good feeling, and building towards that is fine. So you got to balance that thing between time to reward, right? Carrot and stick have to have a really good balance, and this game just doesn't feel like it has that right now for me.
Yeah. In fact, I just did a count while you were saying that. Including scrap, there's 9 types of currency.
Right. Yeah, so I said, you are constantly getting rewarded. It feels very much like winning a slot machine and then realizing all you won was $3. Is just okay. It looks real pretty, but this really means nothing.
Yeah, it's I don't know, that's interesting. I mean, the one thing that I would point out there is the fact that for a 3rd revive, I need 5,000 dragon coins. And it's just like, I've been there. I've been to that height of coins, but then I decided to spread it out amongst a bunch of different little upgrades. So now here it is. Here's the oral history. I wanted to talk about Splintered Fate this episode. It was one of those situations where I'm like, we're going to finally discuss this game. It's been out for 2 weeks. We've gotten to play it a little bit. The bloom has kind of gone off the rose, but before next episode, I want to complete a run. And completing a run for this game, spoilers, just like blanket spoilers over the whole thing. I'm just going to say that. Sorry to Sejohn. It doesn't seem like he's really enjoying the game. And B, I don't think anything I'm about to say is going to spoil anything.
I do think I'm enjoying the game. I'm not enjoying the game enough to dedicate the time to it that the game wants to be a game.
Yes.
But I do enjoy it while I play it. It's just not keeping
But
me
I
engaged.
don't think that anything that I'm going to say is going to change your level of enjoyment, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that everybody knows that as well. Anything that I'm going to say here should not affect your level of enjoyment with the game, but it's a thing. So what a completed run is to defeat Shredder. The game consists of 4 biomes: the sewers, the docks, the streets, and the rooftops. And I guess strike one against it is that the turtles are the rooftops are the domain of the foot. And that's just flat not the case in any Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles property. Any adaptation of these guys, they own the rooftops. That is how they are not seen by humanity. The Ninja Turtles live in the sewer and travel via the rooftops.
There's not much that people need to know about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles before they see pictures of them jumping from roof to roof.
Right, exactly. I mean, the cover of the first issue is them on a rooftop. It's pretty, oh, okay. If you only read the first issue of the comics, you'd be like, oh, these guys live on rooftops? Oh, no, they live in the sewer. You'd know them as rooftop people before knowing them as sewer people. And that's saying something, considering, what do you know about the Ninja Turtles? Oh, they live in the sewer? There you go. They like pizza. That's it. So it's very strange that you fight from your home to the rooftops, and all they're saying is, these belong to the foot. We have to be careful. And it's do they, though? It kind of seems like maybe they're just patrolling them. I don't know. It's a little strange. So those are the 4 biomes that you go through in the game. And I'm going to defeat Shredder so that I can finally say my piece about this game. But what I did, and this is a good, like, we're a philosophy podcast at our core, right? We try to, like, focus on happiness, trying to be Zen and all of that stuff. Please don't write us letters if you're Christian and me mentioning Zen goes against the teachings of your pastor. That's a reference to a letter literally received from a small boy to the Ninja Turtle people. Like, I really like your comic book, but then they started talking about Zen, and my pastor said that that's evil. And then, this used to be my email sign off before, like, I realized it was hyper incendiary. P.S. Read your Bible. It does wonders. That's how that kid finished that letter. And that's something that stuck with me since I read it in the back of a comic book 20 years ago. More than that, right? I was 13 when I read that, and I'm just like, what the fuck? 25 years ago. Boo! Sorry, that's all in my head. So I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. But, one of my philosophies, one of the ways that I live every day and try to get through, rather than trying to accomplish the big goal, right, I prefer to establish small, relatively attainable goals that will ultimately lead to that grander goal that I am looking for, right? So with video games especially, right, it's not I want to beat this game. It's like I would like to beat 2 bosses today. And then I'll feel like I accomplished something. I won't be like, man, I can't believe I didn't beat that game that's 900 hours long. No, you beat 2 bosses. You should be happy about that. My small attainable goal last Sunday, as Sejohn said, there are multiple currencies. And as I counted out 9, and I could still be wrong. Because like that 7, I wasn't separating out Dragon Coin, Dreamer Coin, and Scrap, which are the 3 actual currencies, let alone all the victory currencies that Sejohn was referring to. So that's it. What you receive whenever you beat Karai, who is the boss of the docks. Karai also, this is based in the IDW comics world. I don't fucking know when. It has to be post issue 50, but before issue 100. But also, I read the tie-in comic book for this, and it does not center it anywhere in the universe. It's also very much just marketing material. I thought that it would give information on certain characters that I'm very, I want to know more, but we'll get to that part of it. Whenever you beat Karai in the docks, you receive a medallion that is the color of the turtle you defeated her with. And it requires maximum 3 of these in order to upgrade some of the things in the shop. So I left the Say report last week. I went upstairs and I said, I'm going to get 3 medallions as every turtle. Some turtles I had multiple medallions on already. Like Michelangelo, I think I had 12 medallions. But that's just life, right? No, actually I didn't. Raphael, I had 8 medallions on because Michelangelo, he's going to be important later on down the line. So my goal was, I'm going to go make sure that I can get through the second biome as all of the turtles 3 times. So then I can finally look at these upgrades that are just blacked out. You can't even see what they really do until you have that. Because I'm Devon Decker, I also said, and we're not going to spend any currency from the start of this mission to the end of it. So that by the time I can open these things, I actually have money to spend on these upgrades. Right?
Right.
I knew that I could defeat Karai, so that I didn't need to make myself any stronger to do that. So it just seemed like a way to buckle down, make sure that I could open up pathways that would make the rest of the game easier. So I was done with Raphael. I started with Donatello because Donatello in this game is super friggin' slow. I wish that were not the case for Donatello in every friggin' game, but because he has the reach, video game designers have decided Donatello has to move like molasses going through molasses. He is so slow.
Yeah, the balance triangle there of speed, power, and basically special ability, I guess, would be the third option there, right?
Yeah.
His special ability being reach, right?
Well, I mean, like, so
would think they'd want to lean more into like power and like he can get around just like the rest of them, but when he hits, he doesn't hit as hard.
He does not hit as hard. He also has, because as much as like the triangle makes sense, it'd be more of a trapezoid with this game because you also have the tool that every turtle starts with, and his tool is literally invulnerability for a second and a half, whenever you activate it. But yeah, and his whole thing, like his whole character, now that I understand the game, is about using your tools and making sure that they recharge as fast as possible. Which I will say, in terms of a roguelite game, which is one review called this Hades Light, and I dig that. I think that it's kind of a good way to understand like Hades, but then once you play Hades, why would you ever go back to this? Which we'll get there, I guess. But yes, so that is the whole thing about it. So Donatello is slow, and even though he has that, so I wanted to get Donatello out of the way, right? That's I feel bad saying that, but it was that like he's not going to be my first choice, which is ironic considering everybody else around me is like, I want to play as Donatello, and it's like, go with God, good luck, right? I will try to keep you alive. It's whichever turtle I pick. Did it as Donatello, was fine. Started up as Leonardo. He's kind of the most rounded of the characters. His tool is Shuriken, so he has distance attacks. He can fight from a distance. It really works for him. Also, his special, this is good. Claude and I were playing it, and he's like, hey, how do I make Leonardo's special not suck? And I'm like, upgrade it? Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, yeah, it sucks that all he does is, like, the X chop through an enemy, and it's not super powerful, and you're left open to be counterstruck as soon as you do it. But once you're able to like upgrade it, you can do it like 4 times before it has to be recharged. So it there's a balance there. But that took a lot of time to get there, because Sejohn's right. This is a bit of a time sink, this game. But I go through as Leonardo, and I'm finally like, okay, so I'm starting to see the appeal of this character. Raphael, he's all about up-close fighting. I'm just bringing him up because he was already done. I didn't need to do him last Sunday. His tool is stupid. He is Scorpion for Mortal Kombat. It only works on regular enemies. For bosses, it pulls him to them, doing like a pittance of damage, and then just leaving him open to be destroyed by the boss that he just pulled himself to. But the nice thing is that you can get other tools as you clear the levels and get to pick your upgrades for the characters.
For some reason, I thought I was able to disconnect when I've only played him once, so I'm not 100% on that. But I felt like there was a way to double press the buttons so that like you hit and then disconnect.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case, because part of the learning curve for him was making sure that all the stuff got pulled to me. Like, so you're probably right. Because the other thing is that because this is a phone game, all of the buttons have rapid fire on. So you don't need to keep tapping the attack button. You can just hold it down. And that same thing happens for the tools. So
and they're like super limited to like the depth of control on the controller is not very deep, right? And like where versus something like Hades, where I feel like there's a million different like things going on that like you need to, and that feels good. Like as a gamer, like I want my fingers to be busy, right? But because of what you're saying with the rapid fire and like the fact that there's not really much here except like tool button, attack button, move.
Yeah. Well, you have attack, special, tool, and dash. Here's the thing. If you're going to be playing this game, right, and honestly, after I say everything, I don't expect anybody to. Apologies to everybody that I got to purchase this game. I will still play with you. That I will say that. But it's $30 that is not going to be a satisfying experience. Foreshadowing. But if you're playing on the Switch, the right triggers, so ZR and ZL, ZR is your tool button and ZL is your special button. So you don't have to take your fingers off of attack and dash. So that is a kind of a nice like quality of life upgrade for this version on the Switch.
Yeah.
And knowing that really changed my game. Because like having to go all the way to the other side of the face buttons to activate my tool made my tool not appealing to use. Because this is the kind of game where like you should always be attacking. You should never not have the attack button down. And, I guess I could use a quarter and a piece of Scotch tape, but why bother? Right? I don't know. So Raphael, he's got that tool, and then I finally play as Michelangelo, and my second time through to get the Karai medallions, I ended up beating Shredder, and I didn't really do anything like too crazy. I broke the game. I will admit that I broke the game because I was able to give Michelangelo Donatello's tool, the hardened shell, which again gives him a second and a half of invulnerability, and then I was able to upgrade that twice so that it's 2.2 seconds of invulnerability, and that's just how long it takes for Michelangelo to recharge it.
I was going to say, and then the rebuild on Mikey for his tool is
super fast because he has the highest DPS of any of the turtles. So yeah, I was just invincible. It was activate, attack. As soon as I could activate it again, and I was able to clear the game. And as Michelangelo. So like, oh, okay, I've already completed the goal of beating the Shredder. But much like Hades or any other roguelite, once you beat the game, that's sort of when the real game begins. Like everything else has just kind of been tutorial up to this point. And it's not even like a new game plus sort of thing. It's more the fact that this is the game that they wanted to give you, but they wanted to make sure you understood the game so you weren't overwhelmed. Like the heat system in Hades, or in this one, what it introduces is shimmering portals and gauntlet portals. Shimmering portals are basically just the heat settings from Hades. If you go through this, every enemy is stronger, but you'll get a 10% boost to all of the currency that you earn throughout your run.
Oh man, Tiny Tina's Wonderland had a phenomenal multiplayer after game that was this. Like the after game of that is exactly this kind of concept of like going into battle rooms, getting portals to pick from. You know, certain portals give you certain prizes, and it legitimately, like I played more. Like I ended up actually spending more time in the multiplayer in that game than I ever did in the single player. Like the single player, I kind of breezed through and didn't really go too deep into like any special stuff, but multiplayer I was like super down on because that system just felt so good and rewarding.
Yeah, and it does. It works here. The interesting thing about the shimmering portals is that they will begin showing up from that first room where you get your starting upgrade. But as soon as you do not take one, there will be no more shimmering portals for the game. Currently, there are 2 shimmering portals that I avoid. And 2 of them, and like that's not even true. Now it's just 1. Because it started out there was 3. Portal of Paupers, which is everything in the shop costs double. But it turns out that if you take that, you're earning enough cash that you don't really feel it. So that one's not bad. Portal of Plundered Pizza, which makes all of the healing from pizza halved, which kind of sucks. But there are other ways to heal your turtles, come to find out, but we'll get there. And then the last one is Portal of Scarcity, which I will always take because it removes 2 of your options from literally every room reward screen, but it always removes the top 2 options in all of my testing. And the top 2 options are the ones that make the game fun. Like, I don't want to be like a dick about that, but usually that's like one of the upgrades in one of the like several like fire, water, electricity options you can do, or it's the ability to heal yourself or upgrade yourself are the top 2. So you're kind of left with, for every reward, extra currency or like a 4-room boost to the character, which is fine. It's just like, it's not randomized like it is with Hades, where you're like, you take away choices and like every room it shows the 3 and then 2 of them are crossed out. And it's not like always the top 2. It's like 2, your options are limited, but in a way that like kind of makes sense, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Like, it seems like they took a very easy way out in this regard.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if it's intentional because you're right. The third option is always usually currency or a 4-room boost, and I wonder if that is an intentional like side effect of the scarcity. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't But it's one of those things where, like, eventually I'm sure I could clear a run as this. In fact, now I kind of want to challenge myself to do it. I think as Michelangelo, I could definitely do it. Just because, like not even trying, ended up finishing a run as Michelangelo, right? Mm-hmm. And I've gotten there because my second run as Michelangelo, my run where I'm like, well, I got to get that last medallion for Michelangelo, I found a whole other way to break the game. And I completed all of the gauntlet challenges because there are legendary powers in the game. The only way to know about these legendary powers is if you get the splash screen that mentions you can get legendary powers by synergizing upgrade trees. Good luck trying to find them. Like, that's the other thing. There's no compendium, encyclopedia that shows you this stuff. You just,
or is there any tracking of it after you've done something? Like, if you mix two things properly, does it retain that in some way? And
not
say, hey,
that I can find
anywhere.
Anywhere. I have been looking and looking.
That's a bummer.
I took to Reddit.
The old notebook.
Yeah. I don't know if you were there the time that I got Bright Light. Where I don't remember who was playing that time that I got Bright Light, which is if you do astral light powers and water powers, you can eventually get the ability that every attack heals you for 2 HP, which that's super broken on somebody like Michelangelo, who like hits 8 times when you attack.
Yeah, or any turtle that ends up with the invincibility
with the invincibility shield,
because,
right?
Like,
yeah,
you just put invincibility on for a second and then like heal yourself up real quick in a group of guys.
Yeah, while also charging invincibility again.
While also charging. Yeah.
That's how, like, because the other one, the gauntlet challenges, is basically hard mode for the bosses. For most of them, it means that they take more damage, but also they have ads. And let's talk about ads when you can heal yourself. Those are a boon. That's not a punishment. Oh, I'll go kill your ads and get my health back before I try to attack you again. Thanks. So, and that meant, like, gauntlet challenges are required to get gauntlet coins. I filled out on gauntlet coins that second run as Michelangelo, where not only did I have the 2-second shield, I had the bright light healing. So I'm like, I'm not afraid to fight these harder versions of bosses. And actually, big spoiler here, the harder Shredder, as you regularly fight him, has 2 health bars. Gauntlet Shredder only has 1 health bar. It's a fuck of a fight. It is a very difficult fight. But you only have to beat him once instead of having to beat him twice. That seems like a weird trade-off to make him hard mode. I don't...
Yeah.
I don't... Just like...
I mean, that sounds like something that in testing they had to remove the second bar.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what this game's, like, history has been on the phone. Obviously good enough to merit them succeeding in doing a port of the thing to consoles. So, like, I imagine that it has its audience, right? And in that, I'm sure that there are some things that have been in this game that we'll never know about as people that came to it on console, right? And one of those being, I wonder if Shredder originally had 2 health bars in hard mode, and at some point they were like, ooh, this is not working.
I mean, there's literally nowhere safe to stand in the fight. Like, the floor is lava the whole fight. So it's basically a race against time. And yeah, like, there are, like, small things, but, like, you have to dash to them, and by the time you get there, you'll have to dash to another small safe zone. And then you're like, you also have to try to attack this guy. It's a difficult fight. And I've beaten it without the healing thing and without the invincibility, and that made me feel pretty good. And then I'm like, yeah, I never need to do that again. That was not... I don't feel, like, empowered by doing that. Thank you. But yeah, so Michelangelo basically breaks the game. I discovered that. But again, then you're given the whole storyline of, here's a trophy, and it's one of Splinter's items. And then Metalhead analyzes, and he's like, oh, this coincides with a list of 8 items that went missing from from our lair when Splinter disappeared. So then you're like, okay, so I have to beat this game 7 more times to see the ending, right? Like how Hades, you don't really get the true ending until you've defeated Hades. I think it's 10 times. I've never gotten the true ending in Hades. There's my confession right now. Because they introduce a whole character who's working in the shadows and like there's a bunch of story stuff that also happens in addition to the game now feels like the game we really wanted to give you, but we wanted to make sure you understood. we also are now going to introduce more of a story than the Turtles need to save Splinter from the Foot Clan. And Sejohn, I've cleared the game 8 times, so I've seen the true, what the internet calls secret ending of Splintered Fate. But then, they're the Ninja Turtles, so they redouble their resolve that they're going to find this guy working in the fucking shadows who's, been giving them guff, right? And they think they're so funny because he's like, you'll have to play my game if you'll save your father. Meta context. But I've now I've done 13 runs of the game, and there's nothing more. Saving Splinter is technically the end. So even though they're we're going to get to the bottom of this guy who took our father and this game he's making us play, that's not in there. Now, the game had existed on Apple Arcade for a year before coming to consoles. Mm-hmm. And now on consoles, that's still where it ends. So it's
does it feel like there's some intention to be adding content eventually, or is it sequel time, or or is it just or does it just feel like they're done with it and they didn't expect anybody to make it, so they forgot to build an ending?
It feels like that. Well, we built an ending. You got Splinter back. That should be enough for you. And also, here's a sad thing that I have to tell people, because I said I'll join your games and I'll help you play. Zach from This Toy Makes Me Happy. We played a game together in his world, and after we defeated Shredder, and it was his first time defeating Shredder, Splinter was back in his lair. So sort of Suicide Squad kills the Justice League. If you play with somebody who's beaten the game, you beat the game, and it locks out all that story stuff for you. Now, we don't know if that's 100% the case, but it was weird seeing Splinter back there, and then the Turtles talking it's good that Father's back. Zach beat this once, and I hope that it didn't take away the replayability that was there, scarce as it was.
Yeah. That'll be an interesting thing to go back to in a couple of weeks and see where he's been.
Yeah. So I got very upset about this last night, because this was a game I was, of the people who played it that first night, I seemed to be the least enthused about the game. It's very poorly balanced for the co-op in ways that it just makes rooms feel like they last forever when you have 4 players.
I feel like they don't do much more than just add more people. I don't know if I saw maybe some different enemy types, but I can't even really think of any off the top of my head.
What it feels like to me, having done the both of them, is they also give more health. So more things spawn, and they have a higher health pool, because you have multiple people who are playing and trying to get through. So they're trying to balance it. We've talked a lot about how co-op balance works. This game did not break that code. They just did we'll add more enemies, and those enemies will have higher health bars. It's not even that they do more damage, it's just the fact that they take more damage to defeat. And no better than that, because Zach, once we defeated the Shredder, we went in and we started doing the portals and the gauntlet stuff. We did the gauntlet fight of Leatherhead, and it was insane how much damage we had to do to him to defeat him. It just, okay, that feels broken in a way. I don't think they were ever expecting a co-op gauntlet challenge to happen. To quote Zach, I thought my Switch was going to explode. It sounded like a jet engine. So, yeah, that's fun, huh? Thumbs up. So it's just, I was down on the game. I'm it's good, but I kind of like playing it alone instead of co-op, which, no Ninja Turtle game should you be I think I'd prefer playing this by myself.
Yeah.
Right? That seems like you've already failed. And then in playing it and learning the little intricacies of the game, how things synergize and all of that, I started to really like it, to the fact that I cleared the game, right? There are no credits when you clear the game, which is weirdly disappointing. To know that there's no way to roll credits on this game is, I think, the part that makes it feel unfinished for me. But then
there's not even a credits option in the menu?
There might be, but I don't. The menus are so sparse.
Yeah.
Sejohn, I don't know.
Because they expected you to be on a little tiny phone screen.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't. Finger, right?
Yeah. No one's gonna waste their battery watching the credits for this. Oh, okay. That's that. I guess you're kind of right there. But the option should still be there. Also, there's an easy mode. I don't know if you knew that. I stumbled upon that, like just going through trying to find like
Hades God mode or like something different.
I guess like Hades. I've never really messed around with Hades God mode. All I know is that I went to mode and I'm like, oh, what is this? To see what it is, and it's like there's an easy mode or there's a normal mode. And I'm like, I hope I'm on normal mode, right? Like, I just backed out of it. I didn't choose anything. But I'm like, but I wondered, like, how would I know? And I guess the fact that, like, you have to go into that to find it means that they probably start you on normal. They're like, this is a more balanced roguelike experience, is how they describe normal mode. So I don't know, is just what I have to say.
Normal has always implied default to me.
Yeah, exactly,
those
right?
seem to go hand in hand, yeah.
But I don't know. We seem to be living in a post-tutorial society in a lot of ways.
Oh, you know what though? Okay, yes, you are right, but you did have a unique experience even in that regard. Not like totally unique to Devon, but like you had a different experience than intended in that regard, because you jumped in to play it with us multiplayer that first night, and I had already played through the tutorial. So when we all jumped in together, it like skipped through that. It didn't show you the entire like opening. You had to play on your own later to see the opening like story and tutorial section. So like you didn't get the tutorial that this game intended. And then once you did you feel you learned anything you didn't just pick up while you were playing?
I was disappointed that it's set in a way where it is built in this way where you can't win. Like, imagine if you could, like Dark Souls, right? I think of Dark Souls or Demon Souls.
Yeah.
It's like, narratively, you're supposed to lose this fight. But, like, Dark Souls and Demon Souls, you have that fight that you're supposed to lose. But once you've gotten good at the game, you can do the tutorial again and actually win that fight. Mm-hmm. Like, they set it up to be able to do that. And that's cool. Like, that's a cool way to do that. You could never go back to the tutorial of Splintered Fate and beat Shredder. Because once you do a certain amount of damage, it just jumps to the next cutscene. Because I'm like, I bet I could beat these guys. I know it's 4-foot mystics, but like, I know enough about Leonardo and dodging that I bet I could win this fight. It's going to be hard. It's going to take forever. Oh no, it just jumped forward.
See, I would not lay it on them that they need to work in what happens if you win the scenario. If they want you to lose in that moment, narratively, then fine, then lose. But do give me a reason why, even if I'm good enough to win this fight, I still lose. You know, have Shredder show up and like slam his fist down superhero style and it knocks me on my ass or something. Just something. Give me some. Don't just skip to the video.
Right, exactly. It was just like, oh, that wasn't fun. Like, it'd be great. Like, it's like, oh, you think you've won, and then stabbed. And like, oh, no, fudge, my father's gone. Yeah. I don't know why I just added
the portal knife or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, like you just have the scene happen anyway, right? Whether you lose or win, you're fighting against the person without honor. So like, they can do whatever you want there. But I guess where I'm talking more about like that lack of tutorial, that like you need to go into the options menu to find everything out, as the Nintendo World Championships NES edition, right? Like that thing that still exists. And I see all of these people online, and I actually just checked because it's probably just Bader Meinhof, but I feel like since we talked about it at length last week, like speedruns have started of the game, and I'm seeing it everywhere on Twitch. Like, it took a couple of weeks, but, like, the world has caught up with the fact that this thing exists. And I get a little annoyed whenever I see a streamer who has the default view of your gameplay on the left, video of your fastest clear on the right. Because, like, it's not good content. I don't mean to be rude, but, like, there's a way that I can see a better version of what you're playing, as opposed to this nonsense.
Yeah, but to your point, they may not know that they can do that.
They probably don't know. Like one streamer who I went in and I'm like, do you prefer this view? Because I'm like, I'm going to collect data and see if there are people. Because basically what Nintendo World Championship NES Edition, after watching a bunch of speedrunners like do it and use speedrun terminology with it, it's kind of like speedrun practice, like the game. Because when you practice for a speedrun, you practice like specific things over and over and over again. It's why I would never really consider myself a speedrunner, because I don't like to do that practice shit. I just like to run the games fast. I was thinking of a term for it, but I don't want to say it on the show because I'd like to trademark it before I introduce it to the world.
Yeah, but 90% of like being in a sport of any kind, right, esports included, is like spent in the practice time. Like only 10% of it is you being on display and actually doing the thing.
Exactly, right? But then with gaming, because you need content, so many people also stream their practice. So,
yeah, it's just become part of the package now.
Yeah. But yeah, like I don't want to practice for speedruns. I will get better through each run of the game. And I know that's how I do it. But these people who are like actual speedrunners, people who have like world record times for runs, that's because they practice.
But they
put in
spend
the
like
time.
3 days. Yeah, they spend like 3 days literally sitting in front of Mario 64 practicing the backwards jump. And it's just like, I don't know how the fuck you didn't like pull your eyes out. Like, what are you doing?
Or they've reset on 1-1 of Super Mario Brothers 75 times until they have the perfect run of 1-1. And it's just like, that's the biggest hurdle, is that. So, that whole thing. But I did want to go to the rules to see if it has in the rules that you need to use that view, and it doesn't. So what it probably is people never going into the options menu to see that you cannot show your personal best. And like, and if there's a worse preference, they'd be there. But like, I mentioned it to this one streamer. I'm like, do you prefer it this way, or do you want it bigger? And he's like, there's a way to make it bigger. And he went to the options, and he's like, oh, now this is what I wanted the game to be. Like, it's weird that they don't tell you that, because they give you like a tutorial on like what a challenge is. Like, this is your time. This is that. Like, it could say, in that moment, if you don't want to show PBs, go to the settings menu. Just like the Ninja Turtles game, like most games that have a difficulty, they give you the option when you start the game. But no, we're going to hide it. It's 3 menus deep to choose easy mode. And that sometimes, like, I understand that, like, we're in this time where everybody wants to play the hardest game ever, right? I want to play it on the hardest difficulty, otherwise it won't be a rewarding experience, right? You cheated not only yourself, but the game, right? Like, that's a mentality that's out there right now. But you know how I got good at most of the games I'm good at? I started on the easy mode when I was younger. And then
so we're like, you're talking about it being 3 menus. We're talking about difficulty settings in NES competition, right? Like,
no, I'm talking about difficulty settings. No, I'm talking back to Splintered Fate.
Splintered Fate.
Yeah.
Well, so then in Splintered Fate, then, because this is what I was thinking, but then I realized I should make sure I knew which game we were still talking about. But the thing about Splintered Fate, right, is there's 2 things in that regard. First of all, screen space, right, on the original intended version of this, like they needed in order to maximize like the use of space, they need to have just multiple menus. That's just how those games work. And the other thing is that the idea of changing difficulty is probably something that wasn't necessarily there at first. Like, there may have been like the idea of turning on like a god mode, but I don't know if that is something that would have been the first thing that you put into this type of game, right? But both of those are symptoms of the larger issue that I was talking about, is that it's hard to get away from the fact that this was a phone game at first. Yeah. There's so many different things that they settled on in this game because of the fact that it was originally intended to be on a phone screen, that, you know, I'm glad it did well enough that they were able to bring it to consoles, and I think that it's still a very good playable experience on consoles and in terms of mechanics. But like, at the end of the day, there's just so much going on. There's so much emptiness. There's so much shallowness that is fine on a phone game that we're okay with, but I just don't love on a console experience.
I mean, this was a game that, like, because of how much fun I had been having on the Switch version, there's supposed to be a Steam version coming out later this year. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get the Steam version too, because it'll probably run better. We've talked about lag and other little issues that are going on in the Nintendo Switch version. So I'm like, it'll probably run better. But now the only reason I'd want to get a Steam version of this game is for the modding. Because I imagine that like modders are going to have more love for this game than the people who created it. And I don't want to be mean to them about that, but you're right. They created a phone game. And they created the phone game in the Apple Arcade ecosystem. And the number of Apple Arcade games that do not have an ending is kind of staggering to me. The games that they're like, yeah, we'll release this as it is, and then you can finish it later, is really weird. It's like, it's not early access because you're not being told that that's what you're paying. It's like Apple is encouraging it, like they're signing off on games that are finished enough.
Do you
So,
how many like how often do you play phone games like even down to like Candy Crush and like Merge Mansion and all of those
I
games?
played Angry Birds before.
Okay.
Like, that's the
Well, Angry
biggest.
Birds is also kind of guilty of this too, but
Yeah.
like it is built into those games. It is literally baked into the formula to not end, so that they can just add content for the rest of time, so that you never stop playing. And so like Candy Crush is a perfect example of this. Is like there's probably 3,000 levels in that game now, and there's like four different versions of that game. So like it is part of the idea that with these phone games is that they are going to be, I mean, they are the definition of games as service. They are being created, built while you're literally it's the track being built while you're on the train,
Do you people not
right?
have
Like,
phones? Yeah, I get it. I get where you're coming from. Sorry, that
no,
Blizzard quote is just too perfect. An example of exactly what you're talking about.
but yeah, so what happens when you take that experience and you do move it to something like a console, where we have seen some games that have been trying to get away with this exact kind of thing, and succeeding in some places and not in others, like, but not everything that's not that doesn't it's not a guaranteed hit. It does not necessarily work on console.
Yeah,
So what risk do they take? Do they create an ending for a thing that they never intended to have an ending? Which it seems as like what they did here is that they just kind of were like, yeah, this is a nice way to wrap up this narrative, right? And you're like, yeah, except for the 10 other threads that you left dangling and no promise
except
of
the
a
fact that I have
of
no idea who this dude who is manipulating the game is. I have a bunch of beliefs and a bunch of ideas, but like, I just want to know. Like, it's clearly not a character established from the IDW universe. I was like, it could be Null. But then I was reminded that Null in IDW is a female, and he very much is a male character. And I'm like, could it be Null's father? And then no, Null's father was introduced, and he's not an ethereal shadow being. So it's just frustrating, especially because in the ending where they get back Splinter, they're like, we'll have to get to the bottom of this mystery. So it kind of feels like if you keep playing, eventually you'll be able to get to the bottom of the mystery. Like, they lie. They flat lie to you. And that's not fun, Sejohn.
Yeah.
It's not fun
Well,
being
and so
lied
let's
to.
talk a little bit about the story here, because hop on my segue with me, Devon, because I think that this is going to lead us into a multiverse conversation for just a moment.
Whee! Yes.
You had mentioned earlier this idea that you don't quite understand where it falls in like the IDW storyline as much as it wants to tie itself to those, and I think that that's like, as somebody that is not as invested in the comics as you are, right? Like, as someone that is only tangentially aware that there's even different versions of the Turtles depending on what era you're talking about and stuff like that, like that, even as somebody that far removed, you feel that in this story that they don't really have a good footing on what's going on outside of the boundaries of the game itself. I mean, like, at the most base level, things like level design, where like you don't feel like you're in a real city like you do in like the old Turtles arcade games, where like there's like life going on in the background. You just don't see that kind of stuff in this game. Like, it's very kind of bare bones in that regard. But then even like in the story that they're telling, it's just some very like bits and pieces nonsense to move you to the next thing, but nothing really cohesively comes together into like a larger story. And I had kind of mentioned this at some point, and you said, oh well, the game opens up more like once you really start getting through, right? Like, and that kind of thing. And I get that that's going to come if I continue to play, right? But like, I need to. You can't keep promising me that. At some point, the game needs to give me something, and they are just not giving me enough to care about the story. And I don't, and I'm starting to wonder how much they care about the story, right? Like it's getting to that point, and like it's because it's I think like it's because they've leaned on this really weird dimension thing. They basically have given themselves this nice big out to say like, hey, we're related to the IDW comics, we're related to the Turtles in some fashion, in some way that you know, but because we immediately introduced this idea of different dimensions and portal hopping and all of this stuff, we don't have to play by any rules. And like that's just not that's not that's fine, in a it's just such a weird tactic for somebody to take nowadays when we're seeing that fail left and right? Like it sounds so cool on paper, but we have yet to see anybody really take that exact concept and really give it like a good go. I don't know. I can't think of anything. I really can't think of any specific multi-dimensional portal hopping story that has come out in the last like 5 to 6 years that has really landed with the people, right? There's always some issue with these kinds of stories in terms of like disconnect. The audience just doesn't care anymore because you've introduced basically the mechanic above all reset mechanics.
Okay, so have you seen Deadpool Wolverine yet? This is a question that I have
Yes.
to ask you. Okay, I'd really like to dive into that. Can you wait a week to talk about Deadpool Wolverine? Because I want to just give a whole episode to it. And since it is the #1 movie in the country right now and made $1 billion, I want to give people a chance to see it before we like really dive into it.
Yeah. No, we can wait.
But everything that you're talking about, which also means apologies to people. I know we said we were going to talk about San Diego Comic-Con. We're also not going to talk about San Diego Comic-Con because all of my thoughts about San Diego Comic-Con, literally every single one of them, is tied to how I feel about Deadpool Wolverine. In this way that is just, it kind of makes me sad on a level.
We don't really want to talk about them right now because of the COVID. So
yeah, there's that part of it too. But so there's stuff going on there. Well, but next week, so if you haven't seen it, you have a week. I saw it a second time, and this is a movie that benefits from a second viewing, especially because all of the expectations are like gone the second time you see the movie, so you can enjoy it. The one thing I will say about Deadpool Wolverine right now, and then I will tie back into what you're talking about with multiverses and universes and all of that, Sejohn, is the fact that a friend of mine gave it a 4 for story, and I understand on a first watch why you would be there. But I think that 4 out of 10. Because he gave it an 11 out of enjoyment, but a 4 in the story department.
I have opinions about that.
Yeah, no, we'll have opinions. And this is our teaser trailer for Deadpool Wolverine. Next episode. So see you then, true believers. To go back to the multiverse thing and not knowing where this takes place, I didn't realize that the Punk Frogs, who are a major antagonist in this game, were not introduced until issue 125 of the TMNT IDW comics. They were mentioned in name in issue 110, but then 125 is Teenage Mutant Punk Frogs is the cover. Like, they take over that book. So I'm sure they show up a little bit before, but like that was kind of their big thing. To think of them only existing for 25 issues before the end of the series is crazy to me. Especially when you consider that IDW comic books are about 18 pages of content. Like, not to be a jerk about that, but like one of the reasons I stopped reading IDW books is because it just wasn't enough there to justify the price.
As a smaller company, that was always kind of part of their bag, is that they were taking bigger risks. They had weirder stories, right? But they also were not necessarily pumping out the same amount of content that DC and Marvel were.
And that's why I decided I'm just going to buy the trade paperbacks, because the trade paperbacks weirdly kind of read like what an old comic used to read like.
Yeah.
Like maybe it'd be 2 issues worth of content, but the way that they like diced it up to go for like 4 issues was really difficult, especially when my like introduction to IDW was Ghostbuster trade paperbacks. So I had the whole story, and then when I found like one of those issues in single, I read it and I'm like, wow, literally nothing happened in this book. I need to stop buying these month to month. I will wait for the trade paperbacks so that I can get, a full story out of it. And I'm somebody who stopped reading the IDW TMNT stuff at like issue 32 because it was getting to be a little much for me. But that's me. That's where I'm coming at it. But if the punk frogs are in it, that means that this game takes place after the mutagen bomb goes off in New York City.
Okay.
And the game does not feel like Mutant Town exists in it at all, which is insane. Outside of the fact that the punk frogs exist in the world, like I didn't think Mutant Town existed the way that they treat it, because they
don't talk about it. They don't address it. So why
They have so many allies there. I mean, Jenica was introduced like around 105. I need to see when Jenica was introduced. I'm sorry.
But yeah, this is what I mean, right? It's like, because they've introduced this concept, though, that they don't have to put their foot in any solid timeline or canon or continuity, whatever like way you want to measure this. Like they don't have to do that, and so they don't bother to, which is such a disappointment. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing with this multiverse stuff right now across the board is like people are just having a really hard time because these things are purposely built to not take a stand on how they affect the rest of the world. And it's just like, well, then why should I care, right? And like there is this, and it's interesting that like your friend gave this like a 4 out of 10 for the movie, 4 out of 10 for story, but still an 11 out of 10 for enjoyment, right? Because like to the Turtles concept, like to this game, Splintered Fate specifically, I get that. I get that mentality of like, I don't really know what's going on, but I'm hanging out with friends and playing and having a good time, and that's cool. And like I guess that's not how games are often made nowadays. And so maybe it's just a matter of like needing to like reevaluate like my ideas there, my feelings there about like, shouldn't it just matter that I'm just having a good time, I guess. It's just it's a disappointing choice in a Turtles game because I love the narratives of the Turtles.
Yeah. You're not wrong. I mean, I'm the guy who like doesn't really care about story. I'm more, and I'll say that, right? Like, I want to have fun when I play a game. The story is usually like just garnish to me, and it can be enjoyable
when that garnish is garbage.
Right? Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we have had, as much as narrative is not the thing that drives you in a game, you still pay attention to it, right? Like you're not necessarily the kind of person to like skip cutscenes unless it's the second or third time you've played through it, right?
Exactly. I will always watch all the cutscenes first time through a game, even though like I just kind of want to get to more game. But they did it, right? It's part of the pact that I'm entering into with the creator of the game, is to like experience the entire piece of art, right? Later on I get to choose the parts, but like once I've seen a movie, I can fast forward if there's a scene that I think is particularly slow, right? We never got to do our Cannibal the Musical episode because of the SAG-AFTRA strike. However, I would tell that with friends, they would always skip over the journalist song whenever we watched it. And I'm like, but that song's funny. Like, you guys just like, it's boring. And I'm like, oh, man, I'm really glad I'm not friends with any of you people anymore. Is really, like, just the thought I have right now. Because it's like, no, but, like, just, now I'm starting to see what that might have actually represented, especially with some of the people who it was. But, yeah. Also, to go back to just weird fucking shit about that game, if the Punk Turtles are there, that means that Jenica already exists as a turtle. So the fact that, like, Jenica is not there at all in Splintered Fate, that's fucking weird. Yeah. Like, that, like, she became a turtle in issue 95 of the IDW comics.
Yeah, so it's like, it's very firmly removing itself from that specific continuity, but is more than happy to dip into that's the canon of IDW to pull out like fan stuff.
Yeah.
And like, and again, it's not that that stuff can't work, right? Like we've talked about how like you can do some fan servicey stuff, and as long as you're doing it well, like then people can enjoy it, and it can still be good art, right? That's just not it's not landing here for me. Like it feels gross in some moments where they choose to be like, huh, you y'all like this, don't you, you nerds? And it's just like, thanks, man, thank you for this.
Yeah, and then like yeah, Venus is also there. If based on the fact that the punk frogs are there, like yeah, and you say that like they're borrowing from it, like Angel showing up. Like you don't know who Angel is, right? Do you have any idea who Angel is, Sejohn? And she has
Nope.
such a prominent role in the second biome. And like Karai calls herself Shredder's granddaughter, which also is not necessarily true because in the IDW comic books, Shredder was alive in feudal Japan, died, and then used dark magics to resurrect himself in the modern age. He's basically a gargoyle for all intents and purposes. And Karai is his granddaughter, but like thousands of years removed, not 2 generations removed. So like that's a whole thing. But to call him grandfather, that's very IDW. Casey Jones, the way that he's portrayed, Slash, the way that he's portrayed, like it's very much IDW versions of characters. But then like we don't care about the bigger continuity of it. Like on some level, wouldn't it be cool to be like this is the first IDW TMNT video game? And like to actually take the time to try to make that work. But yeah, they don't. It's just like it's a hastily released phone game, as you said, and honestly that just came into focus for me, and it disappointed me because I gave it a lot more time than I would ever give a phone game. And
I think that there's a lot of really good stuff that they did bringing it to console.
Yeah.
I do think that the game works, which is not something you can always say in these instances, right? Like that's there's definitely like trash on the Nintendo eShops this nowadays that is just ported phone games that just aren't cutting it, right? But there's a reason why this game had the audacity to charge you $30 and then like actually earn that, because that's the other thing is that like I know you said before that you don't know if you would recommend this to someone now for $30 and that you were apologizing, but like I'm not sad I bought this, especially because it was $30, right? Like the fact that it was a $30 experience, and yeah, I'm a little disappointed now after playing it for a bit, but at the end of the day, I feel like I got $30 of my time out of it. Like we've played a couple of times together, and that's been a blast. I've played with the family once, and that was a blast. I've played it on my own and discovered I didn't love that, but I did do that for a few hours. So like I got, I've got my time in with this game, and I feel like I feel like it earned that from me. Like so, like there is definitely a game here, and I do hope that they do some tweaking to it. I maybe a sequel that solves some things. Like I'm not disappointed in the fact that it exists or that I spent time on it. I just don't think I'm gonna spend much more.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing was to kind of get it out of my system so that I don't spend more time. And I have other games that I want to play, which we'll talk about a little bit after this whole thing wraps up. I think the final thing about that, and very rarely do I say that, like, oh, like the money I spent on this thing, Shredder's Revenge was a $25 game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a game, right? Like, it had a beginning, it had an end, it had ideas. They did 5 free updates before the DLC to make it a more robust experience. And it was 5.
It also had some stuff that it was kind of doing differently than other Turtles stories, right? I'm not wrong about that.
What do you mean?
Like we were talking about with this, like with Splintered Fate taking from IDW, but then not really following the continuity. Shredder's Revenge felt very much like it was taking from specifically the old arcade games, but like also like the cartoon show. But it didn't feel like it was in that same space too. Like it had kind of its own narrative in that regard, right?
Yeah, like because April is a very capable fighter. I do believe though, if I had to set it anywhere, I would set it in. It's a weird thing. It's definitely a multiversal variant of the 1987 cartoon series.
Right. But where it succeeds in that regard is it builds an awesome world that
Yes. Yeah.
like makes sense. So I don't feel like it needs to obey the rules of this thing and then I'm disappointed when it doesn't, because it has created its own world. It's created its own truth in a big sense, right? And Splintered Fate never pulls that off for me, or
No.
has not pulled that off
No.
for me yet, and I again don't know how much longer I'm going to play it. So like I can feel in Shredder's Revenge that while these are versions of these characters I'm not extremely familiar with, I understand how they exist within the world of their own game, and I don't always feel that going on in Splintered Fate.
Right. I mean, like all the video games, like even from beginning from the arcade game, do feel like they exist in a continuity split off from that Toon universe. And that I'm fine with that. Like that doesn't bother me. But like this one, weirdly kind of stationing itself in IDW. I mean, down to like that's what their lair looks like. The fact that Raphael is always referencing Rupert's Pizza. The first issue of the new ongoing Turtles book dropped last Wednesday. And even like in that, he makes a reference to, I haven't had a slice of Rupert's in a couple of years because he's incarcerated. Of course, spoilers for the new ongoing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing. He's only incarcerated in an undercover sting operation with the warden to like root out issues that are going on in the prison related to corruption amongst the guards. So like even that wasn't like fun at the end. Like it was just like blatant tropes being used again. Raphael being like the first mutant held accountable for his crimes, that seems more interesting than anything else. But then, no, like you're here to help me clear out the corruption. And then the warden is murdered and he's framed for it. So then he escapes from the jail. Like, oh, okay, thank you for that. Like, I get that he can't just be in jail the whole time, but the stories that were being told in there, like he stopped some guys from escaping because like at the heart, he's still a hero, but he's also willing to do the time for what he's done. I don't know. It was disappointing. And like, I have just immersed myself in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles this year. Sejohn is one of the people who gets all of the photos of the figures that I've purchased. I just got my San Diego Comic-Con exclusive like representations of the first Ninja Turtle sketches, Eastman and Laird's. And I'm very excited to like, I got 4 sets of those so that I can have a team of the first sketch turtle from Eastman and a team of the first sketch turtle from Laird. Like, that's cool to me, right? It's the 40th anniversary. The amount of turtle stuff that I've noticed just around my house, I'm like, I have too much Ninja Turtle things. Like it's gotten to that level, and I'll just be honest about it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But yeah, and more is coming, right? Freaking Belly Bomb from the Archie comics has been found at Targets, ditto Mondo Gecko, and a stump wrestling themed Leatherhead. Wrestling turtle figures are going to release later this year. Like, it's been a good year for Ninja Turtles celebrating their 40th anniversary. Mm-hmm. It is just a little disappointing that this is also part of that. Like that, I guess that's the way that I do it. Right, because we have another game coming set out in the Mutant Mayhem universe, Tales of the TMNT. I know that next week is going to be about Deadpool and Wolverine, but like we're probably also going to give a little bit of airtime to those mutants, right? The Turtles from the movie in their ongoing series that'll be on Paramount Plus. Like, yeah. It's been a good year for Turtles, and this is, like, the first one that's, like, this does not feel up to the level. And, like, Ninja Turtles, I've talked about this 100 times, they grew so quickly in the 80s that Mirage Studios was just like, hey, do you want to do a Turtle book to other famous creators at the time? And they're like, yeah, do your stories, and we'll publish them. Right? Yeah. Like, there was a whole guest era of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from issues 22 to friggin' 55 that was just whoever was available to do a book so that they could have new books on the shelves. I don't even think they were doing it monthly. I think like they were lucky if they could do it bi-monthly. So I just it's I don't know, it's a weird time to be a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, it's a good time, but it's also a time that I don't know.
I mean, it's a weird time to just be a fan in general, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the long and the short of it, and that's the way that it's been for it going on 6-7 years now. like even pre-COVID, like it was a weird time to kind of really try and figure out, because we were going to 4 movies a month and buying toys up like crazy, and there was a different video game coming out every month that was a need to play and all of this shit. And so like then it was like, man, we were being overfed, and then we were starved, and now we're being like drip fed, and it's not necessarily good food, and it's just like like there's it's we are it's at the end of the day, the consumer in this country, in America specifically, is always getting the short end of the stick. That's just the way that this system is just built, right? And
Yeah.
fandom is kind of, for us at least, and anyone listening to this show, is the most like tangible example that we have of that, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. And I guess it's weird for me to be somebody sitting here complaining about turtle stories, because I know for the bulk of people who are spending money on Turtles merchandise, they don't give a fuck about the stories. That has been something that I have like experienced firsthand, going to events and like being friends with these guys, like less, like more of a friend than just like a fan who's there, right? Like I've had meals with them. So that feels like something more, right? And it wasn't because I paid $300 and won a raffle that I was able to sit down and break bread with creators of the Ninja Turtles, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that like there's this thing with the turtles that they exist, and they're not the only things in this realm, but they're a good example of this, where there's just enough love and nostalgia for the concept and the ideas of the turtles to keep them going, while not the deep love. There is some people in the fandom, but across the board, this is the case. The fandom doesn't go deep enough where people are like married to specific ideas, and part of that is because of exactly the kind of history that you were talking about. Of like we've talked about the idea of there being all these different versions, different lines, Archie comics, IDW, the originals, like everything, and then the idea that Eastman Lear themselves opened the door to this kind of stuff when like for 30 issues in the early days of its existence, there was all of these interspersed, not necessarily connected stories that were told about these guys. We've been set up to be okay with the turtles kind of doing their own thing, but in that regard, getting to the multiverse conversation again, it removes the stakes. It disconnects you from caring about what they're doing in a way that it's hard to get re-engaged again. Right? I'm so far disconnected from any turtle story specifically that, yeah, I don't care that these two characters that technically weren't together at this time in the comics show up together in the video game. I also don't care that like it also doesn't excite me. Like when I say I don't care, I mean the needle doesn't move in either direction for me.
That makes sense. Actually, I like that. I like the way that you put that. But yeah, I don't. But the amount of people who are like spend thousands of dollars on Ninja Turtles collectibles and then be like, I don't know who this character is, I just know that it's Ninja Turtles. And it's like, that seems strange to me, right? Like, I don't, like, I'm still having conversations with, I don't know who this character is. And I'm like, they're from this issue. And it's like, I know that not everybody has that knowledge, right? But then
Yeah.
I can't think of another. I mean, kind of Marvel cinematic
but
universe.
Like the story,
maybe,
right? Like even if somebody doesn't know the issue number that somebody showed up, the idea that oh, I love that there was this moment with this character, or when this character showed up, people did this, like there's the idea of buying stuff sight unseen is a privilege that, as two guys that talk a lot about their privilege in this realm of buying stuff and video games and memorabilia and all that sort of shit. Like I understand that we are lucky as well in this regard.
Oh yeah.
But we're not that lucky. Like to be at that level where you have that kind of disposable income where you're going to spend hundreds of dollars a month on toys, and there's no connection beyond that is foreign to me. That is such a wild concept to me.
I mean, because it's like the big one, like the Triceratops Gladiators from the first like volume of Mirage just released, and the number of reviews that I've seen from like toy tubers being like, I don't know who this character is, I just like that it's a big beefy Triceratops, and I'm like, that's interesting, but also like, you have no idea who that character is, and you bought multiple of them to build an army in your display. I don't have that. Right? I wasn't going to purchase it unless they like, I have 2 of the Triceratops Gladiators. You know why I have 2 of the Triceratops Gladiators? They put them in a 2-pack with blue Renette And here's another character no one fucking knows who Renette is. Do you know who Renette is, Sejohn?
No.
And we've talked about her on the show before. She's the time mistress who talks like a valley girl.
With the big wand.
With the big wand, yeah, with
movie.
the time scepter that would go on to be the time scepter in TMNT 3. Even though we're not going to have the timstress who wields it, we'll just have her time scepter in the movie. Or, Egg Timer, ancient Egg Timer. She was released as a weird NFT collaboration thing at Walmart where you had to buy it. You went into the store and you bought an NFT at the store. You bought like a card, and then you could choose whether or not you wanted to redeem that card to have the figure sent to you. Like, she was never available in store outside of, remember like Toys R Us when you'd buy video games at Toys R Us and they were all locked behind the counter, so you'd bring up a sheet of paper and you'd trade that in for the game?
Right.
So Walmart was only selling the sheets of paper for $35, and then you'd have to log online to the thing to say that you have that you have one of those figures, and if you wanted to, you could then pay to have them ship it out to you. The whole thing was fucking crazy. I can't even remember the name of it. I wish that I could, so I could like just warn people against it, but apparently it failed so hard that like they just sold all their stock to Walmart. But these figures, because of how scarce they were going for like $80 on eBay, right? A Blue Renette figure would be like $80 on eBay. They released Blue Renette and Gladiator Triceraton for $80 at Walmart. You just like could buy them as a pack, the two of them. And not like a specific pack, like it's a Renette like sort of shrink wrapped to a Triceraton Gladiator. And so for $80, I can get the figure that I would have had to have paid $80 for before, and I also get a $50 figure. What I'm saying is I'm buying a Renette and I'm getting a Triceraton Gladiator for free. Right? And that's what Dale did, and now she has a Renette because she's like, I don't want the red one, I want the blue one, because that's the color she was in the comics that I read as a kid. And she's like, I don't care about this Gladiator, you can just have it. And like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Change the subject. Talk about something else. I feel like we've
the fandom thing really is though just like we're deep in it still. There's no end in sight. Like the ways that people are being manipulated and treated to buy into this kind of shit because it's something that they makes them feel safe and happy is gross, right? And this is just like this has been the story that we've been telling for years, and it just kind of sucks that like we're still not out of it. So I went to the movies this week to go see Deadpool Wolverine, right?
Yeah.
And like I brought a friend with me that she's very much in that state of I don't go to the movies anymore. It's just not worth it. It's going to come to streaming in honestly days, if not maybe 3 months, but most often I'll be able to see it within the next week on streaming. So why would I go to a movie theater? But we got to go to this really cool experience that they've been doing out here with they do box seats now at one of the theaters out here, one of the bigger ones, and the pricing on it is like nothing. Like I paid $13 a ticket for us to go and see this movie on a Saturday afternoon. Like it wasn't even like hey, you have to go on Tuesday morning when everybody else is at work, but like on a Saturday afternoon for $13, we were in those luxury seats that go back or that have like the footrest and all of that. You get like a little tray table and all that. There is a box around you. So you were cut off from the rest of the theater. That's right? Cool. Like you were in your own little box seat.
I have to build my own box.
And there's fucking service for it. There's a little green button. There's some lights so that you can turn the lights on and off in your box if you need it. But there's also a service button, and they'll send somebody in if you want anything from like the stand or anything like that. Or we use a capture machine when we go to the movies now, and so we use the service button to have somebody come and help us set it up. Like it was a wild experience for $26 for two people to go to the movies.
That's crazy. That's
right.
So awesome.
So that was really cool. So like we were in a good space, but we sit down and we saw probably half a dozen trailers, right? Every single one of them being a sequel of something, or I will give Mufasa being a prequel. It's right, but.
So you didn't see a trailer for Red 1? Because Red 1 was like the only trailer I saw.
No, we saw Alien Romulus. We saw Twisters. We saw something 2, some scary movie. Smile,
Oh,
Smile 2.
Smile 2, which I'd never seen Smile, but that Smile 2 one kind of gets me going. I'm going to be honest with you.
The Smile concept scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
The whole like.
Yeah. Venom 3.
Any horror movie that leans heavily into the psychosis thing really gets to me.
I get you.
But
Venom
yeah,
3, Joker 2. I bet
Joker
you
2
saw
was
it.
one of the other ones. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the other trailers that I saw. Captain America. I'm certain you saw a trailer for, because stupid not to.
Didn't
Really? That's interesting.
I didn't think about that. It didn't even occur to me. Honestly, it did not even occur to me.
The trailers ended, and then they did the house announcement, like X is located at the front and rear of this auditorium, and then they showed Captain America: Brave New World.
Well, right, because those are the ones. That's the difference between the ones that are like sold with the movie versus sold to the movie theater to put in front. Like, yeah. No, I didn't even occur to me that we didn't get that. It just rolled right into the movie after the stuff.
That's cool.
That's interesting.
That's very strange, but cool.
But also, but even if we had, it would have just been another one, right? Like everything was a sequel, and it's like sequels to stuff from like years ago. And I'm just like, this is because they don't fucking know what to do to get people to go out to the movies anymore.
Alien
so they're
Romulus,
just trying to give them
though,
safe bets.
I haven't seen a single Alien movie. I'll admit that right now. There's a scene in that Alien Romulus trailer where she's shining the light to see if she has a chest hugger inside of her, and that is so fucking cool to me. That,
Alien Romulus right now feels like it has a lot of the original Alien bones in it. Like I am really on board for Alien Romulus, and that was so we left the movie afterwards, and I pointed out, I was like, did you notice that every fucking trailer was for a sequel? It's just such a bummer because like we were even at a sequel movie, I'm not saying that like every movie has to be original, and I know this is like the tired bit, but like everything is playing off of your love of something that already exists. Nothing wants to introduce anything new to you for you to fall in love with it right now, because there's a risk involved.
It's too much of a risk.
It's a bummer. It sucks. And like I pointed it out, and there was even this like conversation of like, I don't even understand half of them. Like we saw the Twisters trailer, and she just goes, are they just re-releasing Twister? And I was like, no, that is technically a new movie. But like, even from the look of it, they just look exactly the same. I mean, the trailer shows you Dorothy 5. So like, I completely like get why you would see that trailer and just be like, wait, is that just a preview for this movie that I haven't seen in 20 years? Are they putting it back out? And it's like, no, technically it is a sequel. But like, that is what it feels like right now. Is like you're going to the movies and they're just putting the same thing in front of you that they put in front of you 1,000 times before, because like, and because that's all anybody wants too. Because the other side of this is that I was giving all this shit to Deadpool Wolverine and sequelitis and all this. It's making $1 billion. So
yeah.
Like,
this seems like a pretty good way to remind everybody that releasing this Friday is the second episode in our Sandler sequels season of the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, where we'll be looking at the first Grown Ups movie. As Sejohn rightfully complains that there are no new ideas under the sun and everything is a sequel.
Even this conversation is a sequel, right?
Yeah,
like,
we've had this conversation.
This is a conversation that we've had. This is a conversation
times.
that everybody's been having. But you know, it's hard to feel like as a nerd, as a fan, as somebody that wants to be involved in like pop culture and like do stuff. Like I don't go hiking, I go to the movies, right? Like that. This is my hobby, and my hobby is stagnating, and that just sucks. And then they want to know why people in this country are feeling apathetic about things, and it's because even the dumb shit. Oh, Gladiator 2, that was the other trailer that we saw. But even the dumb things that we try and like hide ourselves in, even that stuff is now starting to feel like stale bread. It just sucks.
You know, I started Cobra Kai season 6, and I'm not gonna spoil. I'm only 2 episodes deep. It's because we wanted to finish Walker, which Walker is done, and I'm very mad at Walker, and that'll be the thing I talk about after this, because I'm frustrated at Walker, but for real reasons that are like all Devon Decker related. But Cobra Kai season 6 episode 1, and it's part 1 of 3 parts for this final season of Cobra Kai. Danielle LaRusso says that this is my karate swan song. After the events of this season, I'm going to be done with karate. And I'm sitting there like, he has signed on for a new Karate Kid movie to be released after Cobra Kai. You're a liar, Daniel-san. Mr. Miyagi would be so disappointed in you. You liar. You have no
is he
honor.
Maybe not going to do karate? It'll just be a talking head. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I guess that's it. But it's just like, it's one of those things is like, that doesn't, just like a line, I'm so excited to talk about Deadpool Wolverine. It's going to be full of spoilers. Everybody go see the movie if you don't want these two chuckle fucks to spoil those two chuckle fucks for you. I'm just saying it right now. But it's just like, it feels so hollow, you know? Like, on some level, I get it. This is the final season of Cobra Kai. And I get that, like, this thing that you had already kind of put in your past has now become your entire life, Daniel LaRusso. And your wife is kind of, like, mad at you about that. Which, you know, tracks, because all of his love interests in the other movies, like, they're mad because he cares more about karate than them. So his wife feeling that way, it all works out, right? In some weird way. But yeah, it's it just feels a little hollow when they're like, oh, we're doing a 5th Karate Kid movie and it's going to be Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio bringing the whole series together. And it's like, okay, cool. I don't know how to feel about this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, it's
it's
definitely that idea of, hey, people are
thing,
nostalgic
right?
for this thing. We got to cash in on it, right?
I do have to say, I was very happy that they kind of gave some shit to Revenge of the Nerds, which was like a movie they competed against in 1984 when the first movie came out.
Nice.
Made me a little smile across my face. So Walker, I need to talk about Walker and the fact that, like, 4th season, it was fine. At least there was an overarching threat of the serial killer, the Jackal. I didn't really like the way it ended. They did one of those weird concept episodes that made me want to watch Star Trek Enterprise, but specifically those weird episodes of Star Trek Enterprise that took place in the parallel dimension, like where they wore red suits instead of blue. I don't know. They're like the only episodes of Enterprise I've ever seen, but like that's what that episode of Walker felt like. The 11th, the penultimate episode of Walker was like this weird extended dream sequence that would have hit harder if all of the people who were still alive after dying in the series didn't appear as ghosts in the series like all the fucking time. Like, you're supposed to feel like weird, like, oh my god, it's a universe where Emily never died. And it's like, except Emily literally was talking to him last episode about having to that it's okay to let her go to pursue his new relationship. So, not as shocking to me as you wanted it to be, Anna Freak. I'm sorry. Man, I wish we'd gotten more episodes of the Republic of Sarah than Walker. Now that I mentioned Anna Freak. But the reason I'm mad at Walker is that it ended like, I don't know. I have to imagine they didn't know that they were getting canceled, right? The show is done. 69 episodes, and that's the end of the CW Walker. But because it ends with this amazing setup for a season 5 that, like, I'm so mad that it's going to go nowhere. Right? The second season was all about their neighbor ranch that they were feuding with the Davidsons. The Davidsons lose their ranch in the second season. The third ranch, they're like taking care of it. They end up starting a horse rehab center there because they have the space and they have people who like have horses that they want to rehab. So they're like, yeah, we're responsible for it. We can make some money off of it. It can help with upkeep over there. Blah, 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 blah. 4th season, they like kind of never mention it again. The whole like Davidson's farm until the last episode where like you can just hear construction in the last episode. And they're like, oh, whoever's moving into the Davidsons is going to be, they're making a lot of noise. And it's like, well, maybe they'll just be neighbors and it'll be fine. The end of it is all clad in white linen. You only see the feet, which are sandals, and then it moves up to the hands. So you're not seeing the face, right? You're not sure if it's a man or it's a woman. They knock on the walker's door. Quiet, like no one answers. They put down a basket of homemade soap, right? Like very much homemade soap with a note that says, hi, neighbor, sorry I missed you. And then they turn around and that's where we see the face. and it's James Vanderbeek. And clearly he's like a cult leader. So like they were going to have to deal with living next door to a cult in season 5 of Walker. And I'm so upset that like that didn't happen.
With James
Vanderbeek as the leader. Like what the fuck?
Maybe Walker might be, this might be one of those things though, where we get like a movie on Peacock in the next like 2 years and they can address it or something.
I would love that. Because so much of it felt like we know we're ending, right? Like it was a graduation party for his youngest kid.
I'm surprised they didn't cut that. Like legitimately, like of all of the things to happen in when you find out you're canceled, it must have been contractual, right? Like you can't like something about like at this point we can't cut out James Vanderbeek. We his contract won't let us.
Right. And they did the best thing, right? Like his name never showed up in the credits. Like it was a full-on surprise. He was at the end. He was credited as a special guest star. But like in the beginning, like it wasn't like, oh, we're gonna run into him somewhere in this episode, and so like you're kind of like in the back of your mind subconsciously waiting for that to happen. No, totally out of fucking nowhere, Dawson is fucking back, and he's a fucking cult leader in Texas. Tune in for season 5, unless we get canceled, and they got canceled, and I've like. It's the most disappointed I've been in a show's like cancellation in a while. So that feels good, right? Like we've been getting endings, but that's one of those situations where like you guys could have done a really good ending to Walker and like left on a positive thing, but no, you left us with like the most intriguing shot ever. So like I don't know. I mean the show's weird. They really treated Ashley Reyes, who played Sid's girlfriend Hannah, wife Hannah on How I Met Your Father, she ended up showing up as a recurring character named Cassie Perez, and they literally did the trope where the guy that she was interested in like was only there to further the plot multiple times. Mm-hmm. And it's like she was dating a guy. And it was one of those things where, like, you can tell that it's a show that has multiple writers because whatever episodes that are written by one writer, like, really kind of made it feel like he was going to be the Jackal, which was in, like she was just dating the bad guy in the last season. You guys have one fucking move. And then ultimately he ended up being killed by the Jackal, and the Jackal was this fucking nobody that we had never seen before. But, like, so then Cassie still has her relationship ultimately fridged to give her like character development, and it's just like, man, you have no respect for your one female character on this show. And that's not 100% true. Like Adette Annable was there, but she was the only female ranger on the Texas Ranger show. And it certainly makes me question, because they had the early, like we've talked about Walker before on the show, so I don't feel completely out of pocket talking about it. But like Mickey, his original partner, and how great she was, and one of those questions of like, I wonder why she would leave the show. Probably because of the way she was treated as the only female ranger on the show. I mean,
I saw the writing on the wall for what was going to happen with this character, right? And just decided it was not worth the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she had a moment too where like she shot somebody and then it like shook her up that like she could have almost hit like Walker when she did it. I don't know. I just like I'm a little sad that Walker is done like on a real level, not just the you stole James Vanderbeek away from me yet again. God damn you, American television. But, like, ultimately, it opens up room for other stuff. Like, I watched the first episode of Mayor of Kingstown. That was pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to, like, feel that way about the rest of it. But as an establishing episode of television, I'm in. I'll admit
it's
that.
A pretty successful show in its own right now. Talking just because we're in this world now, because this is what's his nuts that did Yellowstone.
Taylor
right?
Sheridan, yes.
Yeah, I went out to the store and the Yellowstone thing I have already talked about getting out of hand, the merchandising, but Lay's potato chips right now, all of their ranch flavored potato chips, at least out here in Utah, are all layered, are all labeled Yellowstone version or Yellowstone special edition ranch, and it's like, is this just ranch though? So why is there Yellowstone special edition ranch? What is?
That's insane. I haven't really eaten Lay's potato chips. It's a twofold reason. One, they treat their workers like garbage. Two, we found a big piece of wood in a bag of potato chips from them, and their response was like, "Oh yeah, that happens."
Oh, gosh.
Like, it does? Huge fucking pieces of wood sometimes come off of the peeler machines or the packing machines, and like, it had been cooked with the potato chips. Like, it had somehow gone into the oil. It was a cooked piece of wood that was in a bag of Lay's potato chips, and it's like, you know what? I think I'm going to spend my money elsewhere. Thanks, Lay's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was not expecting, that happens. Oh. Could we make it so it doesn't happen? No, that'd be too much. That'd be too much work for us.
Yeah. Well, the government says we don't have to, so Frito-Lay's, that's what it is.
Yeah,
it's
Frito-Lay's. Yeah, it's Fritos is responsible for that, not the Lay's part. Sorry, it got into your Lay's potato chips. No. That's all the Frito Bandito's fault. I don't think I left any dangling threads here. I think I talked about everything. Oh, the thing that I'm doing. I'm starting Final Fantasy VI. Because Hab Guy, you remember Hab Guy, you wrote a nice review of A Quiet Place 2. He's like, I think I'm going to try to finally finish it. And I've owned the Pixel Remaster for a year now. I guess I should finally finish Final Fantasy VI so I could say, I finished the first 7 Final Fantasies. Instead of saying, I finished the first 7 Final Fantasies except for Final Fantasy VI.
Six is the one that has the opera scene in it and stuff, right?
Yeah. The one that, like, kind of everybody loses their mind over, but I had played Final Fantasy II, and that was, like, the one that made me lose my mind, but nobody cared. But Final Fantasy III, which is actually the 6th one, but it was just called 3 in America, because I'm sure everybody knows that, and we knew a guy, Sejohn actually lived with him for a little bit, who insisted on calling it Final Fantasy III, because that's what it was when I knew it. And I'm like, yeah, but then when you find out that it's the 6th game, that's the more accurate way to refer to it. Also, when the third game has been released in America, like,
yeah, especially because in the grand scheme of the Final Fantasy stories and stuff, it makes sense as the 6th one. It's not that they, anyway.
Not that every Final,
when you play it, I think.
I'm excited to. I mean, I've played through. The last time I played it was during Blythe Spirit, to center it in our own timeline.
20 years ago at this point?
Yeah, almost 20 years ago. So that was fall 2005. And the reason was my duty as stage manager was to set up and break down the set every night for the show, because they had that huge, the walls are attacking thing. So I would get there, I'd set it up, and then I'd have to be on site, but with no responsibilities. So I'd sit on the scene shop, and I played Final Fantasy VI on that crappy little TV.
Nice, man.
And I got very far. I think I collected back all of the characters in the World of Ruin. So, I know a lot about the game, but then, my mind was, you need to teach them every Esper to master level before you can continue and finish the game. Which, made me hate the game. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I've said, I'm no longer a completionist, and I'm pretty happy about that.
I am a fan. I actually have a friend that actually wrote a lot about Final Fantasy VI while we were in grad school together because of things like the opera scene and stuff like that. So I have some feelings about that game, and I'm really interested to talk to you as you play it.
Cool.
Maybe I'll jump in too. I'm not going to play it as deep as you probably, but I think
I'm going to try to get all the characters. Definitely that part. I definitely want to have Umaru, Mog, and Gogo again. Because I think it's cool that they have a Berserker character. I think that was very interesting to do that. If you don't get Mog, then you're not a real Final Fantasy fan. I have to say it. It's just the truth. He's the whole mascot of the game. And that is 100%. We talk about how marketing fucks shit up all the time. Making a Moogle the face of Final Fantasy III in America Final Fantasy 6, but like in the whole marketing and stuff, like he's like, yo, I'm Mog, and this is a and he got all this like he was like Sonic the Hedgehog essentially.
Well, right, yeah,
then,
but even the Final Fantasy logo even has like a Moogle like hugging it on some games and stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all post that. Like he was the whole marketing of 6 as 3 in America, and then like just sort of became the de facto mascot because of that. And the fact that he's just a hidden character in the game, like you might not get him on your team, that's the greatest trick the devil ever played. The Squaresoft devil ever played. But yeah, no, so if you want to jump into, I mean, it's all because Habway said it. He's a little bit further. He's at the branching paths in the world of balance. But I think I could catch up with that, especially since I'm not going to be wasting my time on Splintered Fate anymore. I think I want to play the Visions of Mana demo. I think it's available on PS4, right? Do you want to check out that demo too for this?
Let's wait. What's the full line?
Visions of Mana. So it's the new.
It's just another one of the Mana series.
It's a new Mana series game. It looks beautiful, and the demo dropped this week. So I downloaded it to try it out. I didn't get a chance to before this. Just like I didn't get a chance to check out Cape Crusader, even though I had planned to once you directed me as how to watch it. But you know, life happens. Once in a while.
So that might be the last thing that I would want to talk about today is that Cape Crusader. I want to talk more about it. I think I can't recommend the show enough, but if I was going to say anything, I'd say watch the first 2 episodes. There's a lot of stuff that has come out into the public domain, the public consciousness about that show, and a lot of that has to do with what happens in episode 1. And so, like, watch episode 1, but I think there's not going to be a lot that's going to like surprise you so much with that in that episode. There's still some stuff to talk about, believe me.
Did the full series drop, or is it going to be like a weekly
the full series
drop?
The first 10 episodes, I guess I should say. I don't know if that they're considering that the full series. They tell a pretty epic, good like 2.5-parter at the end of the season. That's pretty awesome. So like the first 10 episodes that were up, I don't know what that means in the grand scheme of things.
I was gonna give it 4 episodes. That's what I tend to do. I wouldn't watch My Friend Superman if I didn't watch the first 4 episodes. Like that really took 4 episodes to get me engrossed.
Well, so what this does really well is in the first episode you see a lot of what they kind of are trying to do in terms of moving the like establishing some old stories, because for anybody that doesn't know, Cape Crusader is an animated show that is from Bruce Timm, who worked on who's been working on DC animated stuff for a while, but was definitely involved in the old
Batman the Animated Series. He was the driving
Batman
force
the Animated
behind
Series,
it.
Yeah. Because at some point it becomes the Adventures of Batman and Robin too, is like weirdly tied up in that, but it's all Batman
and Robin.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so what they're doing with this show is trying to get back to that mentality, but not necessarily continuing that show's storyline in particular. In fact, not at all. Like, so it's not that show's continuation, but a lot of the same stuff that they were doing on that show, where they were introducing new characters, really rebuilding backstories for certain ones, or reinforcing backstories for certain characters. Like, they're doing a lot of that work in this show as well. And the first episode is really interesting in the ways in which it really leans on a lot of the stuff you kind of already know, plays with it a little bit, but like at the end of the day, it's a lot of the same stuff you really already knew about, kind of Gotham and Batman and the way that it works. And this is very much like a year 2 Batman, to give you kind of an idea of where he's at, because like there's some really good stuff about him still learning. But then what episode 2 does really well is just turns a bunch of shit on its head. It introduces it levels up characters in a really interesting way. Certain characters that were you kind of know in passing become really important now in the grand scheme of things. Also reinvents some stuff that's going on, shows you how dark the show can really get. The first episode gets pretty dark too, but like episode 2 actually was the one that knocked me on my ass. For all the talk that episode 1 has been getting online, episode 2 was really the one that really got me. And I was going to text you, Devon, to be like, can you at least watch the first 2 episodes so that we could talk about just everything? But then I was 20 minutes into, so essentially had watched episode 3 and was just like, fuck, this one's really good too. Like, it is one of those shows where like every episode just kind of gets a little bit better as you're going along, and I've just been really, really enjoying it.
I mean, I watched all of X-Men 97 and kind of hated my time with it. This is one that I was excited to watch. The only problem that I had, and you know, this is were to talk about it, I had no idea that it had released. Like, the
Yep.
way that I was seeing everything felt like it was stuff that was being, like, sort of leaked from reviewers. And then, like, I didn't see it anywhere. And, like, and I go through all of my streaming stuff. Like, I do have all of them. And I try to use all of them at least once per week to justify having all of them. And even then, like, somehow the fact that this had released, like, fell through the cracks for me.
So the two places that I really kind of saw anything about it being out, right? Because I, like you, I'd seen a bunch of stuff of people talking about it, but with Comic-Con going on and everything, I was just figuring it was all just previews and stuff.
Right, exactly.
But the only reason I even knew anything about it being out is two places. Is Prime. If you just go to Prime Video right now, it's the #1 show on there. So it's all over the place on Prime Video. If you are in that sphere of recommendations, right, with the ways that you and your family all kind of watch Prime, like, I'd be curious to see what it pitches like your dad when he signs in versus you when
as
you sign in,
soon
right?
as you told me that it was on Amazon Prime, we went into Amazon Prime and it was the splash image at the top of
right
it.
exactly
So, like,
yeah.
it was like one of those,
that
like,
one there. The only other place I was hearing about it was that I own a Samsung TV, right? And it's
Oh my
internet
gosh.
connected. And so it was also a splash screen on there for Prime, right? Other than that, nowhere else. But it just goes to kind of show you the kind of bubbles that you kind of end up in with the streaming services the way they are right now, with doing things like the rotation and stuff like that. As we talked about earlier, like not knowing Futurama was out until I saw like an ad on like a third party website today. Like, and that was the first time I had seen anything because we're not on Hulu right now. So without going to Hulu to see, hey, this is what's new, this is what has released, and without having Hulu being watched enough that it becomes kind of the thing that other products related to it latch onto, right? Because Google is always watching, Samsung is always watching what I'm watching on these TVs. Vizio, Sony is watching everything that I do on my Vizio too, right? So like if I watch Over the Hedge on Vizio, which I did this week, got to go see Ben Folds, how could I not watch Over the Hedge? I then started getting recommendations for like Kung Fu Panda 4 through my Vizio TV and stuff because like, you know, it's just in that, it's all in that same package, right? So like without having this stuff kind of feeding me the shit in my bubble, nothing is getting in right now because like that's the other problem with trying to like get invested in anything or watch anything is that like I don't watch Game of Thrones, right? So I couldn't fucking tell you where they're at right now on House of the Dragon. I don't know. Are they
season 2.
Do they canceled yet? Like what's going on?
No, it's kind of the biggest show that's on Max right now, and they just wrapped up season 2. Like, I don't believe it, but everything that I see about it is that it is doing gangbusters. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not, if it's just the media trying to spin it. But, like, the two guys from it did the talk show, like the late night talk show circuit, and I'm like, this straight to streaming follow-up to Game of Thrones is, like, interesting enough for people to go on all of the late night shows? Really? I mean, I was never a Game of Thrones guy to begin with. But then the first season of House of the Dragon, I thought people hated. So like for the second one to have really turned it around, but again, it could all just be the propaganda to get them to try to have me watch it.
Yeah,
right? I can't trust anything. I mean, right? It's just,
I had kind of these similar thoughts when I was at the movies and saw a preview for Mufasa and just thought the entire time, like, man, what a wild choice to do a prequel to The Lion King, one of their least critically successful live action remakes, right? But then I forget that movie did also make over $1 billion. Like, as much as people shit all over Lion King, the live action remake of that, at least that's the story as I understand it. I actually, I enjoy it. It's not my favorite of the live action remakes, so I don't like make any effort to defend it. But like, I don't hate it in the ways that I hear some people talk about that movie and hate it.
They have no expression. What?
but then I look and see like that movie was actually successful financially, so of course Disney is like, yeah, fuck it, let's do a prequel for the Lion King. Let's
Well, I want to hear Scar's real name. I know his name because I read the book. I don't remember it right now, but like, yeah, it should be interesting. But it's also a sequel, right? It's a Mamma Mia. It's a Godfather Part 2.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, this is really kind of the first that I've seen much about it, and there is definitely some stuff in the preview that leans into, like, I'm pretty sure you see Timon and Pumbaa at some point. You definitely see Mufasa's face in the sky. So there is this kind of idea of, like, maybe they're going to do Lion King 1.5 it here, where like because literally they invented the trope in my mind. Like they're going to tell the prequel story, and it's going to then overlap into what happens into the events of Lion King, which is kind of an interesting idea. Getting to see what Mufasa's up to in those moments instead of Simba would be, I guess, like interesting. It's not anything I've ever thought I cared about before, but I'm also not like turned off by the idea of checking it out, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, like Mufasa, your son needs to see you. Do I have to go to the cloud
like,
face machine? Yeah, you got to go to the cloud face machine.
but like that idea of like, I just was under the impression this was something that we had just buried because people just were just not interested in it. But I think again that kind of speaks to the idea of just kind of bubbles, right? Like we are so hooked into some very specific spaces that it kind of really warps your understanding of like what's going on outside of those spaces, and that's true of everybody.
Yeah, it's and it was a bigger deal, I think, like in 2016, the bubbles. And I had hoped that had burst them, but you're not wrong. More and more, I am seeing just how bubbled everybody is. Especially, I had a conversation with a stalker at Target, like a stock person. I don't know. It sounded weird to me about like current entertainment, because they saw me like going through the toy section, or like, did you see Deadpool Wolverine? And then they used that as a jumping off point to talk about their bubble, which was like a lot of like Warhammer stuff and Diablo 4 stuff. And I'm like, I don't really know these, but like I know enough that I can understand what you're saying. But what I could really understand was that like disappointment from a fan in the things that they've changed. Not for like, oh, this will be an interesting story, but what it feels like is just in pursuit of more money.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
yeah, I mean, there's no hiding that in some of the Diablo stuff that has happened in regards to that, the idea that they pumped out a game that maybe was not ready for prime time and things like that.
Yeah. So that was an interesting conversation to have. But it was one of those things where like, wow, everybody does have their own little bubbles still. Even in like something that is supposed to kind of be universal, like fandom, right? We all are fans of different properties, but we should be able to share it. And I don't know, like it was an eye-opening experience.
Looking from the outside back on a bubble I used to be in is also really wild. I've been talking to a lot of friends who have been really invested in the ending for Destiny 2 the last couple of weeks, like getting really involved in that, and like Cade 6 being a huge part of that. And I was like, I'm in. The whole reason I don't even play Destiny 2 anymore is because of the fact that they killed off Cade 6 in an effort to be like edgy in like their story. They were like, hey, this is our most popular character with our most popular actor involved in this thing still, and guess what? We're gonna kill him off. And I was just like, yeah, that doesn't actually work for me, because he was legitimately the reason I was around. So bye. And then like at some point they brought him back.
He was a robot, wasn't he?
Because I like, well, yes, yeah, but he was a type of I was the same type of being in that world that he was, and I supposedly had been killed and brought back to life with a ghost and stuff, right? So being a robot doesn't necessarily negate the soul
I understand
aspect
that, but
Destiny
it's like,
gets really
but
into.
I mean, granted, we've watched a million comic book characters die and then come back to life somehow, right? So you just can't assume anybody is dead in fandoms anymore. Because
Sure,
money will bring anyone back to life.
But keep in mind that Destiny 2 also did this at a time when it was falling so hard on its face that like
I know.
Nathan Fillion, the idea of that Nathan Fillion was like, yeah, I don't need to keep doing that. Like the actor being like, I'm just gonna be kind of done with this, and that being such an integral part to that character that they were just like that's how I understood it. Is like, we're writing Cade 6 out because we literally can't afford to keep this character in here anymore. So to then bring him back later, and like, it's still, as to my knowledge, being Nathan Fillion again, I don't even know, I guess, but like the idea being that like, hey, we somehow have started to make enough money again that we can afford to bring this character back, is basically the story of Cade 6. And like, I didn't know that they had been doing that well. Like, not that they had been doing so bad that I thought that Destiny was dead. I knew Destiny 2 was still being played. I just thought that it had fallen so deep into the kind of that rhythm of just like yeah, we're pumping out cheap shit, but it's good enough quality that people are happy to pay the $20 of, like DLC package every 6 months, and we'll keep the game going as long as we can keep this dead horse going. But no, apparently it had built back its fandom in some very strong ways, to the point where it's making enough dosh to like bring back some big character stuff for the ending of Destiny 2. And that's a great story that I just was not involved in, because I left that bubble at some point, and the second that I left it, had no knowledge of what was going on in it anymore. It was no longer something that I was like casually finding information about or anything,
Yeah, that group of people that I ended up watching Bulletproof with, and the new Garfield movie, they after that were like, we're going to play Destiny 2. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll jump back into Destiny 2. And then I opened it up and I'm like, right, no, I'm done with Destiny 2 because of, remember when we got Stadia? Remember Stadia, right? Mm-hmm. Stadia sighting in the Say report. They're few and far between these days, mostly because Stadia is dead and it's not fun to like poke dead things, especially when their daddy is Google. Sorry to anyone who might feel differently. But when it released on Stadia, they redesigned the game. Like, I was like fully like, oh, Stadia, Destiny, this is going to be great. I can like hop on for an hour anywhere that I am, because, it's just about having a controller. And then the way that they modified that game to be basically a completely different game really turned me off to Destiny 2. And logging back in, I'm like, yeah, no, like it's so different from the game. And I was never as involved in it as you or Dale were. Like, you guys were real big Destiny guys, and it was fun to play along. I'm not going to lie. We had some good times. But once the game had changed so drastically from what it was to what it had become, I'm like, this isn't the game that I sort of had affection for. Goodbye. And then relogging in and remembering that, like, it's interesting that I still have a character, right? And that all of that's still there, but I'm just like, but it's not the game, right? It's Destiny 2 in name only, and that is weird that it has persisted the way that it has.
Yeah, but there's just this idea that like it was a bubble that I was very involved in at one point, and was even when I was just scrolling through the internet, would come across Destiny news and things like that, because that's the way that it's fed to you, right? Like the way the algorithm was working, it was pushing this certain stuff towards me, and I left that pretty hardcore, and after a few months stopped seeing anything, and in my mind that equated it to it must not be doing well. Yeah. But that's just not true. That's just not true.
Yeah, and that's the hardest lesson to learn about things, is that just because something's out of sight and out of mind doesn't mean that it's out of existence. And with fandoms these days, that's so often the case. But again, I think we're going to touch on that next week when we finally discuss Deadpool Wolverine. So is there anything else that you want to say before we send this one off? I'm feeling pretty confident about this.
Sun's up.
Yeah. Sun's up. I love it. All right. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Say Report. If you've enjoyed what you heard and you want to join in on the conversation, you can join our Discord. Invitations are currently available on our social media sites, on Facebook and X, formerly Twitter, or you can always just send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com. We'll hook you up with a Discord invite, or if you're afraid of Discord, you don't know what Discord is, and you want to have a chat, you can just send an email to thesayreport@gmail.com. And as always, if it is specifically for myself, Devon Decker, or for host companion Sejohn Sarwick, Sejohn, we're on the same level. I don't know, like that. I felt like that didn't put us on. We're at the same level. We get paid the same to do this show. No one is a higher elevation than the other. If we were Cheers, my name would be in the top left, the top right, and Sejohn's name would be on the bottom left at the same time. We are the Ted Danson and Shelley Long of this show. And I think we all know who Shelley Long is, right? Right? Yeah, we know. Just make sure that you put in the subject line Devon or Sejohn, so that it is distributed to that, and the other one doesn't get to see your words, right? Because they're just for the person you wrote them for. Next week, again, I've said it a bunch of times, you got the Deadpool Wolverine episode, so if you haven't seen it, we're giving you another week to see it before we go deep on that episode, on that movie, which is something I am very excited to do. And I guess the last thing on all that is that we do have our grown-ups episode of the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, so if you've listened before, or if it's going to be your first time, check that out. That's dropping on Friday. But without any further ado, without any more revelry, let's throw it over to Will, who's currently in the UK while we record this, to send us home. Have a good one, everybody. Good day.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.